Let me talk a little bit about the labs that you guys got back. You got the your 4 slabs back, or you should have. And they are not included on your progress report because you haven't had a chance to fix them yet. So don't worry about that. And they were out of 30. Were they out of 30? 40. Okay, how were they out of 40? Oh, there we go. I know how they were out of 40. I got it now. Okay. Okay. This is what I was looking for aspect 1, for stating the problem, right? And then listing the variables. Okay, that was worth 10 points, right? And there's a couple reflections, okay? If you're rolling something down a ramp, and it's always the same ramp, and you're not manipulating the length of the ramp, if you failed to mention that the length of the ramp was a controlled variable, I called you on that one. That's like one of the biggest controlled variables that you have. It obviously affects the time. Yes, yes? Okay. So you had to list them. You had to say the dependent variable was this, the independent was this, the controlled variables were this. And you had to make a somewhat ambitious attempt at listing controlled variables. That was aspect 1. And so there we have it. And then for the problem, we deeply don't understand the difference between effect and affect, right? Okay. How does angle affect time? Okay. Affect is the transitive verb. Okay. Affect is the transitive verb. Transitive means it takes an object. Okay. How does this affect that? Almost always, if you're using it as a verb, it's got an A in it. Okay. Okay. There is an effect. Almost always, when you use it as a noun in science, it's got an E. Okay. Just thought I'd throw it out there. Spell check doesn't catch that, right? Actually, the the little grammar check tries to catch that, yes, and it sometimes gets it wrong. Like basically, if you use affect as a verb ever, it flags it. Yeah, you can use it as a verb. How is it used as a verb? No, that's still a noun. Affect means to cause. He affected a change in the management of the Taco Bell, right? To cause, right? Okay, very rare. It's very rare to be used, right? It's almost always as a noun. Anyway, there we have it, right? Okay, so that was 10 points. And then a method for controlling of the variables. I think what I failed to say in the directions is you had to say what you did. So the most common thing was that people would go in there and they'd say, you would never tell me exactly what you did, but you'd tell me all the things you did to control the variables, right? But you have to, part of controlling the variables is also what you did, okay? And so you needed to say, we started the object on the inclined plane, I placed my hand on it, we told the timer, 1, 2, 3, start, I lifted my hand up, being careful not to push it up or down the plane, right? We allowed it to roll, and when it reached the end mark, we stopped the timer, right? You need to say what materials you use, basically enough information so that people could repeat the experiment again. So if you got the WDYD, okay, that's just what did you do? I couldn't figure out exactly what you did. I mean, I think I know, right? But you never said it, okay? You almost always have to have a diagram in here. So I'm obviously going to revise the little document that I gave you because it wasn't clear enough that we needed to say all that, right? Okay, and so basically that's what we're looking for that. And then you had to specify, even though later on you have a data table, it shows all the trials and things that you do, okay? You had to say that you were going to do that in the procedure. I know it's sort of stupid, but there it is, right? So you had to talk about your trials and your variations. Now, those are different things, right? And hopefully we had 3 trials, we had 5 variations, okay? If you only did 3 variations, I want you to gather more data. Okay, if you did 4, well, that's not so good. I mean, 5 is like the minimum, right? Now, do you understand what a variation is and how that's different from a trial? Because I think we're not using this word the same way, some of us. A trial is of the same thing. All trials should be the same, but they're not because of random error, yes? Okay, so I try the same angle, and if I do the 30-degree angle 5 times or 3 times or 2 times or whatever, those are my trials, okay? variations are I try 30 degrees, I try 20 degrees, I try 5 degrees, I try 10 degrees. Those are variations. We vary something on that, yeah? Are we good? So really, basically, the bare minimum would be 5 variations and 3 trials, right? And then we needed another 10 points, okay, for data, right, and a graph. The graph had to be an actual graph, okay? An actual graph is done on a computer or it's on graph paper. So if you didn't do that, that was a real common thing. Do it, don't do it in your notebook paper. That's not a real graph, okay? So make a real graph. Now, the other thing about graphs is that almost always, in fact, in this lab, it was almost always true that you had scalable axes. Okay, what's a scalable? What's a non-scalable axis? Well, non-scalable is vanilla versus chocolate ice cream. What's your favorite type of ice cream? Well, we can't really scale that, can we? Vanilla is not like 1.5 times chocolate or something like that, or vice versa. Okay, so if you're doing like what kind of ice cream do people prefer? We can do nothing but basically make a column graph that shows the relative number of students that like that, right? Okay, but on your thing, if you've got angle and time, right, these are scalable axes. These should all be regular graphs, XY scatter graphs. So in Excel, when you're doing it, it's the XY scatter graph. So just make a note of that, okay? It's not the line graph. That's going to make like, I don't know, some kind of economist's dream or something like that, right? We want to do XY scatter graphs or just a regular graph, right? People did bar graphs of things that should have really been XY scatter graphs, but I didn't take off points for that. Is friction a force a number? It's a number? Yeah, then they're scalable, right? Probably average them and graph them, right? And if you made a bad graph, I just said it would be better to be this graph, but I didn't take off points. Are there questions? Did I take off points and you don't know why from something? If you have a question, somebody else has a question. So. Are we good on that? Right. That's exciting.